Welcome back to hour 2 of Nothing Personal on this Tuesday. And you know what Tuesday means? It means that we have a guest, and this is a special Tuesday because up early and ready to go, we have, you may know him as the head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks. You may know him as the 2015 inductee to the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, or you may just know him as Coach. John Calipari is joining us. How are you, John? Thank you for joining us, Coach.
David, thanks for having me.
So there's so much to talk about as we are approaching the season. So many changes have taken place, and we are not going to get political unless we want to, but we have to talk about money because it used to be that we could go on a show and just talk about players and talk about pick and rolls with Red Holzman and Pat Riley. But now the real talk of how to put an athletic department together starts with money, like the professional ranks, frankly. So I was wondering how it is with you and with NIL, with all the changes that have been made and your career obviously so long and storied. What would you say is the biggest change from day one when you started coaching to today?
Well, the biggest thing I'm battling, the biggest thing that I want to make sure I stay on the right side of is my career. We've always been about being transformational, helping families. It wasn't just a player, it was a family. And doing many draft picks and lottery picks and all the other stuff, max contracts, transformational. I don't want this to become transactional, which, all right, I'm paying a kid to play for me. For me, what moves me, because people say you're still doing this, you still have that passion and enthusiasm for what you're doing. Yeah, because I can help young people and their families move to another level, get them, I call it like the pebble and that ripple going forward and forward and forward and forward. That moves me. Now, winning is a big part of it, David. You have to win to really help kids. And if you want to help a lot of kids, we've had 6 players drafted in 2 different drafts from my team. Well, that team was a Final Four team, won a national title. You have to win.
But here's the thing. You've put so many players into the NBA. It's really quite staggering. I would say that if you have a guy, a young man in a family, and they want to be a pro, they want to play for you. But is that enough of a sales pitch anymore? Because it used to be everything. But if you have a jump ball in terms of money, is that the differentiating factor? Or are you finding kids are really not really understanding your view of transformation and they're really looking at their money?
Well, this will be an important year for that. But the reality of it is, I would say what we do now, people could say, well, they don't do anything different, or, they're just recruiting X, Y. The reality of it is what you said, over 80 kids in that 50 first rounders, 40 lottery picks, 15 top 10 picks, 4 number 1 picks, MVP in the NBA, 2 different guys, Derrick Rose, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. So we're doing something different. And what happens is you bring a lot of good people together. You let them compete. You don't promise the world. You tell them it's going to be hard. You got to develop pro habits. You got to be a great teammate. Great teammates never get traded. David, did you ever trade a great teammate?
No, we tended to trade guys who were bad in the clubhouse and then also bad on the field. The problem was if they're bad in the clubhouse and a superstar, we'd have to think twice.
Yeah, you got to deal with that. And That's, for me, recruiting. The benefit that I've had is all my best players, the Anthony Davises, the Karl Towns, the John Wall, the DeMarcus Cousins, I shouldn't have started because now I'm,
you got to keep going. But
so I say those were the first wave of guys, all great teammates. So it made my job easier. That's part of what happened. Well, when you do that in recruiting, if I see a kid and he disrespects his mother or grandmother, I'm out. You're not going to respect anybody if that's the case. If I see him and I'm watching him play, he doesn't help his team get better. He doesn't respond to coaching. When he's not playing well, he acts like it doesn't matter. Well, that guy, don't bring him into this.
How do you deal with the reality of what I perceive to be the existence of even more and more tampering having to do with the portal and money being thrown around and players, they think they're good, even if they want to be one and done, but then they get another offer. Yeah, have you had to change your mindset and how you keep a team together, or even does it matter to keep a team together anymore?
No, you have to, but when you're in the handshake line after and the guy takes extra attention with one of your players, you kind of, come on, man, what are you doing? Stop. But let me give you some things that I'm really trying to make sure we have an impact with stuff. If you want to ask me, well, how can this stuff change? First of all, the transfer rule has to change. You can't have, could you imagine if your team had all free agents every year? What would you have done? What?
John, can I answer that? Because it's my dream, and let me tell you why. Because the guaranteed contracts in baseball, you end up having great injury risk and great underperformance risk. And we offered the union, John, free agency every year because they wanted to get younger players paid faster and paid more because they can be really good and young and making the minimum. But the union said no, they did not want to give up the long-term deals that were given to players. So I'm very fascinated to hear why free agency every year, which frankly college sort of is beginning to feel like, why that scares you.
Well, there's a couple reasons. One, a young man goes to 4 different schools in 4 years. Does he have a chance to graduate? Is there any loyalty to him from the last school he's at? What are we doing to a young man if we pay him 250, 500, $1 million, and then his career ends without a college degree? He thinks he made all kind of money. Yeah, there's this guy FICA. You're going to pay taxes on stuff. And now all of a sudden he's offered a job for $60,000. Do I have to work? Do I have to show up? Are you going to give me a car? Do I have meal? We're going to have mental health issues for how we're dealing with this. And you know what? Let's not look past and say it's not our fault. We're here because of us. So I'm saying this: transfer once without penalty. You picked the wrong school, the wrong coach, whatever you did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, second year at another school. If you choose again to transfer, you got to sit out. Now you played 2 years at the last school. You went to 3 schools instead of 4, but you were at a school long enough to get your degree or be really close. So it's kind of like guardrails. Here's the other thing. How about freshman recruiting? No one's recruiting freshmen. You know why? 2 reasons: because kids will transfer and they can cherry pick. There were coaches this summer not out one time evaluating freshmen.
Well, why would that be?
Because they're only going to take transfers and they're going to cherry pick and they're going to pay more than the school that they're leaving. They're just going to say, we're cherry picking. That's what you want in college athletics. How about this? We played against kids that were 27, 28 years old. My guys, we had the youngest team in the SEC. So my 18-year-old played against a 26-year-old. Why? So tell me why a 26-year-old is still in college.
Well, if they are, they're called doctors.
Right. No, they're getting paid and they're looking like, I can't make this money the rest of my life. If I could stay till 32, I'll stay till I'm 32. Look, 5 years. You could do 5 to play 5. In other words, we'll give you 1 more year. You have 5, but there are no waivers. If you're hurt, you got to leave in 5 years. If you're hurt twice, you got to leave.
So no red shirt. We'll take that away and just give people 5 years. This is interesting. I hadn't contemplated it. If you give all players 5 years eligibility, and that's it no matter what, and you're talking about losing one of those years on the 3rd transfer. So right. On the 3rd transfer, you'd have 4 years of eligibility. You lose the 5th.
There you go. Now, here's the other way you could do it. The old way, 5 years to play 4. You have 5 years. That means you can transfer. You can transfer again and sit out. You play your last. You get your 5 years. You could redshirt and play 4. You could play, get hurt, play 3. You could do it that way, but it's still 5 years.
Is it changing how you recruit? Do you keep, when you're in high schools, one of the things that I thought about is because of the portal, that teams, there's a limited roster size, obviously, and you have to leave spots open in theory for the possibility of the portal. So is that impacting high schoolers?
Yes.
And they're getting less of a look because you don't know the spots?
Yes. My friends who have children, I can't even get my kid to smell. You got everybody waiting. You got mid-majors saying a top 100 may fall to me. I'm not taking anybody. I'm going to wait. Or they're saying completely, I'm taking older players. If I can coach a 26, 27-year-old, I can win. Now, what does that do for our sport? It totally changed what we do. I'm going to give you another one. The collectives. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
The money comes from different donors and boosters, and then the collectives carve it up amongst the team. How about we did this? Collectives could only be involved with retention of your players. They're not they cannot be involved in recruiting freshmen. They can't be involved in recruiting transfers. They can't give those guys deals when they're coming in. But you got rev share, you got real NIL. They can still be paid, but they can deal with retention. So the players that want to come back, they can now jump in and add money to those guys. So
I worry about the tampering in that case because you'd have players, the collective would be incentivized to get to players before they choose to say, listen, you're a year out, but we have a pot of money here. It's retention money, but we're going to allocate you 400 grand from this. Wink, wink, don't you worry.
All right, here's the problem with what you said. Really good players aren't going to be there. They're gone.
It's true.
And the ones that stay, okay, why not reward them? How about we reward them again? And if they leave as a transfer, that other school can't use the collective money. They can only use money from rev share and all that. So you're better off staying. Wouldn't you want to, we're not forcing anybody to do anything. But here's the other thing I like about it. Basically, we'll double the money the players are getting.
Because it's on top of scholarship?
No, on top of rev share.
Oh, well, yes, the collective would be on top of that. But if you're a player and you're evaluating your deals, you have to, when you're going and if you're recruiting someone, John, if you have the rule in place that you just said, you're competing against other schools who may have already given information on, quote, what the retention money would be, in addition to what the rev share would be.
All right, so here's what I said. You get all the collectives in a room. You ready for this term? Collective bargain with the collectives, okay?
Unionize the collectives.
Yeah, here's what we're going to do. Tell us what you think. Now, here, as a collective, I don't have to be involved in the recruiting. Well, it's easier for me to get money for returning players. If you make that easier, my job becomes easier and I make more money. I'm happy. I'm good. All right. What happens if you step out of line, like the old NCAA, disassociation? So if you're caught tampering, if you're caught talking to young kids, if something happens, we all agree that's the punishment. It's collective bargain. So now all I'm trying to say is we have a way that you're not throwing the collectives out. So stop. You can't. You let them in the house. They solved an issue for us. And now you want them to leave. They're not leaving. So why don't we give them an avenue or a lane that would work for them, create more money for the players, but keep them out of recruiting, keep them out of all the transfer. If they tamper, if they're doing stuff, and that always will happen, but the NCAA's got to have to step up and do something in this.
Well, I'm worried about that because when we think about NCAA enforcement, and I'm trying to figure out what database they're going to have, how they're going to be able to evaluate different deals, what's worth what. it seems to me that it's just ripe for corruption. And I haven't seen, and I don't know if you've been in meetings where they've been giving you clarity. What is happening with the NCAA enforcement and how they're going to value these deals?
Well, it's not the NCAA. It is Deloitte. And Deloitte has relationships with other schools and stuff. So first of all, you walk in saying, well, can you recuse yourself? You have a relationship with that school. Let somebody else evaluate their stuff. But what happens is, you're right. What is someone's value in the United States of America?
To me, it's market. It's whatever someone will pay is truly the definition of value.
And so there is a motion. When you hired a coach, there was a motion, and you probably overpaid. I don't tell anybody, but I've been overpaid like 10 different times.
I've overpaid managers and then fired them and paid them not to manage. How's that one?
And well, you and I did it too. We were okay with it, so it's okay. I mean, it happened to us.
Yes,
so,
it did.
So I would tell you that it's going to be hard, and that's why I say keep that within the recruiting and all that. Let these other collectives deal in retention, and it could be looser. It doesn't have to be that way. It could be more on emotion. And they could, but you're going to double the money for the players. You're going to keep things more in check. Now, here's the bad thing in what I just said. There are schools that have more rev share money than we do. There's a school in our league that has over double what we have in the SEC. There are teams in other leagues that do not have football that have maybe triple what we have. The other thing that happens is the ACC, there's some schools that are making almost triple what today they announced North Carolina's rev share is $7 million. It was announced by Bubba Cunningham. So how do you get within that?
But that just makes me, when we were competing, I was a small payroll team for 18 years. We had to compete against the Yankees. We beat them in the World Series. You're never going to have total competitive balance, or total, there's not going to be a swap of salaries where one team's at 100 million, one team's at 105 and nothing else. So I assume that doesn't get in the way of your competitive juices, your ability to win.
No. But transferring without penalty 5 times does. Playing against 28-year-olds. There was a kid, he had a beard, and he's waving to his 2 kids in the stands. I'm like, what? And I said, what about his NIL? Oh, that goes toward his alimony. I'm like, what is happening here? So I'm saying, let's get that in control. Let's get the collectives to agree together how they're going to operate. And now we can move on. Now, I'm going to say this. If the government, like they'll say, we got more important things to do, we're not going to get involved. Then who really wants the government in your business? Unless there's no other choice.
Depends what the business is.
That most would say 99.8% would say we don't want them near us. But this one, you end up without government intervention in what I just talked about. Maybe codifying the deal that they did, okay? Maybe some safe harbor against state attorney generals that are suing the NCAA. Well, they can't do that government stuff. So, but here's what happens. If you don't, you're going to have to cut sports. If we don't have that. Second thing, Olympic sports are going to get hit, and so are the women. Title IX. I mean, it's going to. How about this one? Do you really want to see 2 leagues, 50 schools, 60 schools, 2 leagues come together and say, we're just doing our own thing? Do you want to see that? How about this? Do you want to wipe out all those mid-major programs that go in the NCAA tournament and do well? Hold on. If you're not in that 50, because your football's not strong enough, we're talking about teams that have won national titles in baseball and basketball, and you may be out, and it may be your school. If you talk SEC and Big Ten and a few other schools, who would be out? You and I could name 20 schools and say they can't have them out. Well, they
Well,
can't
it's the
have them
concept of the Super League. And, they tried that over in Europe, and there's talk. Obviously, listen, we read about it every day with the NCAA. We talk about it within baseball owners' meetings back when I was there. The concept of the Yankees, you need us. What are you going to play the Red Sox for 162 times a year? It's not, I mean, ESPN would have liked that. But other than that, it would not have worked well. But you're against expansion of the tournament, aren't you?
Yes.
And so I'm trying to wrap those two concepts in my head, because one of the benefits, obviously, of expansion is more money split amongst more schools who, when on the bubble, would actually have more of an opportunity. You'd create a different bubble, but it would be lower down. So speaking on both sides of the issue, why would you not want more schools to have the opportunity to get a piece of what would certainly be a bigger pie?
Do you like how the World Series is played? Would you want to make wholesale changes with the World Series? Would you want to add more games to it? Would you want to subtract games from it? Don't mess with the World Series. My thing is, don't mess with the NCAA tournament. And if we go to a super conferences, it's going to eliminate St. Peter's beating us or Oakland beating us. Now, we won a whole lot of games in that NCAA tournament over the years, but
Yes, you have.
those games became and they breathed life into those programs. That's part of the NCAA tournament. That's why.
But if you expand it, you'd have more of that.
No, you wouldn't. It would water it down. It would water. We've gone to those early games to add more teams. I think that's good. It didn't. They're part of the NCAA tournament. They feel a part of it, but the real stuff starts after those games are done. But it's in the NCAA tournament, but they did it in a way to not take away from the NCAA tournament. Just how I feel. And let me say this. The pitch count in baseball, I love it. But I'd probably say at the time, don't mess with the game. It's the greatest thing they did. You can go to a game now in 2 hours. It used to be 5 hours.
Believe
Never
me,
ending.
I used to get home at 1 a.m, and I can't believe there was no pitch clock when I was there. But I think you're sort of maybe proving my point and not yours, which is the tinkering that you may think is a tiny tinker ends up being a mammoth change in how people, sponsors, regular people, how they interact with your product. I think if you're stagnant, you're really going backwards.
So you're saying you don't believe there should be free agency with all these kids. Now, you understand only 3 years ago, there was not. You had to sit out.
Of course. But the whole world, listen, I didn't start this change that happened in the college ranks, but my God.
We did it to ourselves.
You certainly did.
And it happened back at the Eddie O'Bannon. This thing could have been cured back then with California. We had arrogance and we're, our self-righteousness. And now all of a sudden, we're where we are.
And you understand that now, of course, you are all living with the actions of the past. And once the pebble, you talked about a pebble in terms of transformation, the pebble is also what's happening in college. And that pebble is also transformational, not just for kids, which is what you do and you're the best at it, but also for the change that's happening in the sport. And what I'm worried is, well, I think it's a fact. I don't know how to get the toothpaste back in the tube now.
Government. That's it. Government. And let me say this to you. I think we're helping kids because it's fair. What I've said to your listeners today, you can transfer once without penalty. You made a mistake. The second time, you're going to have to sit out a year and play two. Better chance to graduate. Less people involved in tampering. Because would you take a kid that had to sit out? Would you go pay him $1 million? He has to sit out. So it slows that down. It kind of pushes agents back a little bit. But I think it's right for the kids academically, for the movement. How about your own son? If you had a son or my son, I want him to be in situations where he's got to fight. Can't just run. You cannot just run you got to fight. We're dealing with 17 and 18-year-olds, not 27 and 28, 29-year-olds.
Well, of
So
course,
I
you are
think,
dealing with 27, 28, and 29-year-olds. We're
did I
trying to
tell
cut
you,
that
did I
too.
say that? Did I tell you that? Yeah.
Ye-
And I'm trying to say this is college. How about this? If you want to play when you're 25, go to the G League if you can't get in the NBA. Go over to Europe. This is college basketball, college football. And I think it's again, I'm trying to come up with solutions because I'm in the middle of this muck right now. And my son, who played for me, worked for Rod Strickland at Long Island, worked for Jerry Stackhouse at Vandy. He's working for me now. I don't want to leave this sport the way this looks right now for his career. And that's why I'm kind of being animated like, come on now. And if we can't do some of this, the problem with us trying to do the transfer rule, the eligibility, there'll be suits, there'll be lawsuits. And that's why government's got to come in unless they don't mind Olympic sports being hurt or women's being hurt. If they don't mind it being two power leagues, if they don't mind sports being cut, instead of having 18, 19 sports, you're going to have six.
We're
I
going to
mean,
find out. I promised you'd be out after 25 minutes. I would
I'm
like
not
to
ready
keep
to
going.
go.
You're
I ain't
not.
ready to go.
Coke is yelling at me. He's like, let Coach go. He's got stuff to do. How about this? Can we promise to do another round of this?
We
Because
will.
there's so many more topics and it's so important. You've been listening right now to head coach John Calipari, Arkansas Razorbacks Hall of Famer. John, I appreciate your time today. I
Thanks,
really
David.
do. Thank you,
Thanks.
Coach.
All right. Bye-bye.